Hello, this is Angelique, and you're listening to We're Booked Up, a segment of the Gaston Speaks podcast where Kendall, Andrew, and I discuss books. For this episode, we'll be discussing Kindred, a classic speculative fiction novel by Octavia Butler. There will be spoilers for the novel. If you haven't read the book, I think it best I give a trigger warning for potential readers that this book is largely set in the antebellum South and depicts slavery, racism, and sexual violence. So please take care with yourself before continuing. But first, what have we been reading or watching?
I listened to Spare by Prince Harry.
I have no desire to read that, but you go ahead.
I really liked it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was an interesting comparison because I am also kind of reading or listening to Crying in H Mart, and both novels are about grief and losing your mother and dealing with that. And I mean, I have a pause on Crying in H Mart because I'm waiting for my overdrive or Libby to send me the book back. But Spare, it was not what I was expecting. And it was actually quite lovely.
Well, he is your cousin. Very, 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 very distant.
Allegedly. I don't even know if that's true.
That's what we tell people, Kendall.
I know.
That you are related.
Like 11 times backwards. We're supposed
Seriously,
to be
someone mentioned, I was like, oh, my friend Kendall's like their cousin. Like, I just tell people that.
I know. We're like the same. It probably explains why I was never obsessed with them.
Because you are them.
Because I can sense on some molecular level that we are kin.
That's never stopped royals before, though.
I
Yeah,
know,
true.
but I'm an American. It stops me. Anyway, so I listened to that, and I thought it was lovely. I would give it 5 stars. I got a little bit bored during the military parts, but meh. I'm just thinking about he's like the one person that, not one person, but he is a person who has been to both poles. He has been to the North Pole and the South Pole. And I'm like, that's quite interesting. Yeah. He's had a lot more experience, or has had more experiences than I would have expected from a sheltered royal.
But you think about, though, that royal family, I mean, the Commonwealth, they travel all over the world. Like Prince Anne is in New Zealand right now because it's part of the Commonwealth. They still travel to all of those former colonies, essentially, that are now independent countries because they're still so tied back to those economies and those cultures. So, like, you'll find them all the time traveling, and, like, they'll host the Commonwealth of all those nations, like, once a year in London. So you have people from all over Africa, the Caribbean, the South Pacific, and all those leaders from those countries come in because they're still connected. So they get around. They travel a lot. It's not just, like, what you think of as Britain. They are all over the world, which is kind of cool. So
I had no idea because Harry and Meghan have been my first real introduction into really, I'm going to say the monarchy, because prior to that, it's all European history.
yeah.
And I don't know. History is not my jam. I mean, it's like, okay. Anyway, so Crying in H Mart. Oh, it's just been a lot of, like, between that book that was heavy in grief and trauma and PTSD and coping, plus Crying in H Mart, which is about grief, and then Kindred, which is about grief and trauma and PTSD and intergenerational issues. I went heavy, and I'm in YA. I'm in YA now.
Binge or
something.
Like
I'm in YA land. Yeah. So, that's where I am, listening to Nicola Yoon. Bonnie Turpin, my favorite audiobook narrator, is one of the narrators on this book that I didn't realize. It was a happy surprise. It was meant to be. What about you?
So I have started reading Daisy Jones and the Six, which is the Taylor Jenkins Reads. I loved Malibu Rising.
I know you do.
And no one else in my book club liked it, but I liked it. And so I had started the audiobook of it, which is all these different people, and it was just a little too much. So I got the book instead, and I'm enjoying it a little bit more. But that new Hulu series is coming out in early March, so I kind of wanted to read it leading up to it. Kind of had an Almost Famous vibe. And I love that movie. And then the book club books, the Megan Miranda one that I think I talked about last time. I have not started it. It'll happen Sunday before book club, which is how that happens normally. So anyway, and then for watching, I was trying to think, what did I watch recently? I've been in there's been too much going on, so I haven't done a lot of new stuff. But I went through 2 screeners that I loved. One was called All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. It's nominated for the best documentary feature. I've been on a documentary kick lately. Documentary feature Oscar, and it's a 2-part thing. It's about basically the story of this Nan Goldin, who is this famous artist who was famous for photographing and being an artist around the AIDS crisis in New York. But she also herself, she talked about her personal story and her personal struggle with addiction. But then she's also the activist. Have I talked about this before on this podcast? I feel like I've talked. No, okay. She's also the activist that has led the march to remove the Sackler name because of the opioid crisis. They're the ones who did OxyContin. The family that the company created it. The Sackler family put their name on a lot of like art institutions, and so a lot of her art are in these institutions. So she's the one that if you go back, if you ever watched the series Dope Sick, they're the ones that are doing like the protests in those museums to remove the Sackler name. Not the money's there, but to remove the name so that legacy doesn't continue. So it's a very interesting like dichotomy. I've watched it once. But when it got nominated, I was like, I really want to watch that again because it's kind of memory-based and it kind of goes back and forth, and I felt like I missed stuff. So I watched it a second time, and I really, really liked that one. And then I finally finished. I had started it, but I hadn't finished. All Quiet on the Western Front, the remake that's on Netflix that just won the BAFTA for Best Film. I realized I start a lot of things, and then I drift off, and then I don't finish them because that's happened now like 3 times, and I realized I don't think I ever finished that. So I'm at Netflix, and there was like 45 minutes. It's a long movie. It's like, oh, okay, and so I hit play. It is brutal, but it is very well made. So I mean, that's on Netflix. So that's easy for everyone to get to. So, but anyway, it's nominated for like 8 Oscars.
Oh my gosh!
A lot of the technical stuff, cinematography, the sound, the production design, and then it is nominated for Best Picture. So,
what about you, Ace?
A lot of YouTube, a lot of TikTok. I didn't read much beyond this book because it's kind of
heavy.
Yeah, it's a heavy book.
It's heavy.
It's a heavy book.
It really is.
I did watch the first episode of that new show, Animal Control.
Oh, is it good with Joe McHale?
No, it's not
crap.
that great.
Okay,
it's kind of boring.
Yeah, I was excited about that one.
I mean, maybe you'll like it. I didn't like it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it needs to get like many episodes in before it
sometimes
finds
pilots
it.
suck.
Yeah, maybe.
And they kind of fix it. Like they still show the pilot, but then by the second episode, the pilot they test screen and then they'll fix stuff before they shoot the second one. So maybe I'll try it. I'll see. I'll let you know.
I'll let you get like 6 episodes in and come back for a review, Andrew.
Okay. I did that with Ghosts. I had not gotten into it, and then when I got into it, now I'm obsessed. It's such a good show.
So good.
It's such a good show. But it was like, I don't know, whatever. And it got good reviews, but it was actually my mom who was like, and I didn't think she would like it. It's not normally her thing. She's like, I love that show. I was like, okay, I'll try it. I was like, oh my God, I love that show.
Which one?
This is the American one, and I still need to go back and see the British one.
I still have to watch the American one.
Oh, gotcha. It's good.
But the British one's so good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we ready to start the book?
Let's do this.
Yeah.
All right, I'll read the synopsis and then we'll get to the rating. So me, Kindle, we have a different book, right?
Do we really?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, snap.
I have the same book you have, Ace. I don't have Kindle. Oh, that is a different book.
I mean, I knew I have a different. I didn't know if my
I wondered. I was like,
different.
Did you just check that out and bring it in? That was actually Kindred. Well,
it's a beautiful cover.
I love that cover.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure the
it's
synopsis
wonderful.
is different because it's only like one paragraph on the back of the trade paperback.
Oh, maybe I'll just read mine. Or
read yours.
No, you read yours first.
Okay.
We'll rate them.
Dana, a 20th century black woman, is celebrating her 26th birthday with her new husband when she is snatched from her home in California and transported to the antebellum South. Rufus, the white son of a plantation owner, is drowning, and Dana has been summoned to save him. Repeatedly drawn back through time, and with each day growing longer and more perilous, Dana is forced to contend with the brutal legacy of slavery and white supremacy, not knowing if her life will end long before it has a chance to begin.
Sorry, anytime I have to do any kind of performing, reading, I get nervous. Okay.
It's just us. What are you doing?
I know, but I immediately started laughing. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Should I read this quote or do I skip it? Because I think that's what made me laugh.
Skip.
Because it's traumatic and horrible. Okay.
So funny. You said it's traumatic and horrible, and then you're laughing. So.
I know. It's like a hysterical laughter. It's a really bad reaction.
Do you laugh at funerals?
I did. Actually, I laughed at your your aunt's funeral.
Oh, really? Oh, my gosh.
I don't know if Angelique told you, but like right before we went in, I had a mini panic attack. Like I saw because you walk in and she was just right there.
Yeah.
And I turned to Angelique and I started like hysterically.
Oh, no. You laugh at funeral? Okay, you're one of those. No, that's a thing.
We
It's
were there,
an actual reaction.
We were there like 5 minutes, 7 minutes before we actually walked in the room. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Sometimes that's how you react to stuff.
I do. It's horrible.
No, a lot of people do. It's like
reaction.
it's like a psycho reaction. I mean, you're not psycho. But anyway, read the thing. Let's go for it.
I am a little, to be fair. Okay. I won't read the quote because apparently it's going to make me laugh.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, jeez Louise. Okay. Dana is a Black woman whose torment begins on her 26th birthday when she suddenly vanishes from her home in California and is dragged through time and across the country to Antebellum, Maryland, in order to rescue a boy named Rufus, heir to a slave owner's plantation. That is the longest sentence. I didn't take a deep enough breath.
Oh,
yes.
jeez. Okay.
Okay.
That was not Butler writing that. I can tell you that was a...
She soon realizes the purpose of her summons to the past, protect Rufus, to ensure the assault of her own Black ancestor so that she may one day be born. As she endures the traumas of slavery and soul-crushing normalization of savagery, Dana fights to keep her autonomy and somehow return to the present. Blazing the trail for neo-slavery narratives, Octavia Butler takes one of speculative fiction's oldest tropes and infuses it with lasting depth and power to explore the reality and legacy of slavery. Dana, a memorable protagonist, not only experiences the cruelties of slavery on her skin in her dramatic visits to the plantation, but also grimly learns to accept it as a legacy of her own existence in the present.
Yeah.
That's spot on, actually, that description.
Yeah.
But it's as heavy as it sounds.
Yeah, if you're going to read this book, take Kendall's synopsis
I agree.
as what the book is about.
Yeah,
before you,
I agree. That was this one is the straight paper, so they probably had to shrink it down, but that hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, especially for me in Rufus and Alice's story.
Yeah.
Because my brain is so wired to love stories and the idea that love stories can happen beyond the barriers and stuff like that. To know going in that nope, in no way, shape, or form is Alice consensual in this relationship.
Yeah.
Like it sets the scene very clearly for like it. Yeah. I think my description was better. My reading was horrible. Sorry.
The description though was that
description was.
That was the original.
Yeah.
I guess probably wasn't the original printing, but it's probably a. Who knows? Because it came out in the 70s, didn't it?
Yeah, 70.
Because it was set in 76. Yes, that's
79,
okay.
I think.
And in my mind, because I forgot that. Like I would think that, and then she said something like, "When they say where are you from, I'm from 1976," and like trying to explain it to Rufus, I was like, "Oh, that's right. It still was modern when it was, but it's now almost over 40 years old."
I also had to remind myself a couple times that the book, it wasn't just that the author was trying to write as if she was from 1970s. This is actually someone living in the 1970s writing this book.
Right.
Anyway, sorry.
Which I think also is important for the story.
It doesn't feel dated.
It really doesn't.
No, it doesn't. But it also explains 70s was not that long after the Civil Rights Movement.
I had the same thought.
And for an interracial couple, I mean, Loving Virginia was what?
68-ish?
Yeah. So it was a lot. It's a lot more connected back to that history than it's not. I mean, not that right now we're not still dealing with some of these things, obviously. But yeah, it definitely made even more of an impact when I realized that part. That was all.
Sorry, I know we got off track.
You're good.
Rating.
Let's do it. Rating.
I'll go first. A 3.
3?
Yeah.
Let you.
I was 4.5.
I was a 4. 3.75 to 4. And I'll explain. There were parts of it that I thought were a 5.
Mm-hmm.
There was one part of it that I didn't think worked as well. So it brought it a little bit down. But yeah, mine was a 4-ish. For most of it, it wasn't. But when I got to the end, I kind of absorbed it all. It was one of those. It's a very deep. There's a lot of depth, and she writes it very simplistically. But there's still a lot of depth. So sometimes you don't see it, or as you're reading it, and then when you close it, and 20 minutes later, you're like, oh, geez. Oh, like it hits, and that's one of those. So that it lingers with you, but the more it lingers with you, to me, the more impactful it becomes as a novel.
So that's what actually increased mine to 4.5, because I probably would have started at just a 4, but then thinking about it, thinking about its themes, its motifs, how it still is relevant today,
Yeah.
how this discussion, like Marcus ended up reading this at the same time as me through
cool.
Hoopla. Side note, it was available on Hoopla.
Oh, that'd have been nice. I would have.
Like
That would've
audiobook
helped.
and yeah,
Nice.
I know. So,
Okay. I didn't know that.
I know. Anyway, so he ended up through his own path reading
Gotcha.
this book, and so we ended up having a conversation about it, and I don't think we've discussed a book since
College.
okay, no.
I was
going to say The Hunger Games. I think The Hunger Games. He's the reason I read The Hunger Games.
Gotcha.
Anyway.
Okay. So,
First question. What's our question?
first question. Did you like how Butler began the book as sort of at the end with the prologue?
I don't remember the prologue.
That's actually a good point. The first thing I remember is her in the hospital, and Kevin comes in.
Yeah.
Is that the?
Yeah.
Oh,
I lost
I did,
my arm
I
on
did
the last
like
trip
that.
home. My left.
Yeah.
I did like that because if you hadn't have had that, it would have been incredible. That was, to me, the part I didn't think worked as well was the science fiction-y part, because it was kind of jarring to me. And I mean, it was supposed to be jarring, but it was just kind of like all of a sudden. But that kind of led me into, okay, something's going to happen, and it kind of helped me prepare for it a little bit better. Because the first time she jumped, I didn't quite. It just took me a while to settle into that time travel part of it, and then I did. But that was the one part that I didn't think is her historical part, and all those themes that we're about to talk about. Whew, hit the nail on the head. But the science, I didn't feel like it was as much a science fiction novel. So
I don't think she thought of it much as a science.
I know
fiction novel
I think that people have made it. I mean, we put it in sci-fi. You hear one of the great sci-fi novels, and I didn't. Maybe it's my mindset. I didn't really see as much of that.
So I think Octavia Butler is a science fiction author.
Yeah.
And actually, Marcus is now reading Parable of the Sower, and he's telling me about it, and that does sound like science. Like it's set in 2025, and it has all this stuff, and so it makes sense. And then the time travel element. But then
This is just
I'm trying to react to multiple things in my head. Sorry. So to answer, I'm going to go with Andrew. So you were talking about the science fiction. I didn't actually finish reading the reader's guide at the end because I didn't realize it was in this book as well.
Gotcha.
But I thought it was just in the Libby version. Anyway, but it was actually incredibly helpful in, I'm going to use Angelique's phrase, in helping me process what I read. And one of the things it talked about was there is not a lot of science fiction. In fact, the only thing that probably would qualify as science fiction is her going through time.
Yeah.
And the way he described it, the Reader's Guide author, Robert Crossley.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Crossley. He described it as she was kidnapped out of time.
Yeah.
Much like slaves were kidnapped and put through the Middle Passage without any explanation. Yeah. It just happened. And that to me, I would never
connected it a lot
I
better.
would never have connected it, and it makes so much sense to do it that way.
It's good to know that, because I do think because of her other work, we do think of her as a science fiction author, but this one wasn't. That was not the main point of it.
Agreed. No.
And so that's good to know now, because I did kind of was like, I thought she was a sci-fi author. So a lot of her other stuff is more what we think of as traditional sci-fi. This one was a little more the speculative, but more the historical part of it. So it's okay. Okay, that's good. See, the more we're processing it as we're talking about it, it makes it even more depressing, actually. And
then to answer your question, Angelique, I actually really love it when things start kind of in the middle. I like having to piece stuff back together. Yeah. I also, for me, it was helpful because I knew I kept looking in the book. Is this the time where she loses her arm? And it was building up to the dramatic loss of her arm for me. So in a way, it was good and bad, but it caused me a lot of anxiety because I was like, what's the next thing that's going to happen to her that's going to be even more traumatic? Right. And I would have to, like, we talked about how we would have to put the book down. Yeah. Or I definitely did. And sometimes I would have to be like, okay, if it's going to get worse than this, do I really want to keep going? Is this something I want to really digest right now? But I did. And
I would argue that it's something that it's one of those that whether you want to or not, everyone needs to.
Yeah, I agree.
But in that James Patterson novel, that was one of the things where they kept going back to like the ending where they were going to kill the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is done so much better than that.
Yeah. The death of a Black Widow definitely needed to be in chronological order. This one was.
This one worked really well, not being that way.
This one, yeah, I agree. All right, how about you? I get the sense that you don't enjoy it?
No, I was fine with it.
Okay.
I was just, so for me, sometimes, like, when I was reading, I was doing the same thing you were, like, when's this gonna happen? When's this gonna happen? Because I was always, it makes a certain, like, it adds more suspense. Because was it the actual end of the situation, or was it just somewhere in the middle, and then we'll have to go on from that point?
I thought it was going to be in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm kind of relieved it was at the end.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah, because otherwise.
Yeah.
And I when I was in college, I took I needed to take like a seminar, and it was actually a slave history seminar with this wonderful professor, Dr. Andrea Williams, who is now at UPenn. But we read a lot of like so we read like Harriet Jacobs, and maybe that was a different class, but the slave narratives, and we read like Frederick Douglass and that kind of stuff. So I have read and a lot of these types of things. But even when you've done that and you know about this brutality, every new story just it's because it's different. That's what happened to them is different than what happens to Dana. And every new time it's just like a fresh, like, just, bam.
Wound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so even though I feel like I've read more of that kind of, those kind of stories than probably a lot more the most average person out in the world, it doesn't make it less shocking.
You haven't been desensitized.
No,
That's good.
I've not been desensitized to it. No. So,
all right. Next question. What did you think of Dana?
I felt for Dana.
Yeah.
The whole, like, I have to keep Rufus alive because if he doesn't, I don't live. But then knowing the horribleness of this, having to survive all the things that she survived physically and the absolute grotesqueness of and brutality of American slavery, which we could go on a whole topic of that, was bad enough. But knowing, like you talked about, knowing the non-consensual, but knowing that it's her family history, that, I have to save this person if I want to be alive in 1976. That's just a whole nother layer the whole time I just felt for her. She was strong. She was, despite everything she was thrown through, she always looked ahead. And I think that there's something about that that's just noble. But man, it was just, I just felt for her. It was just awful. She wasn't awful. The experience was awful for her.
I really liked her.
Yeah.
Her ability to tap into her compassion. And like even in the description and this beginning summary thing where it was like she's still struggling to maintain her identity from 1976. She knows what she knows. I really liked her. I keep thinking about like when she turned to Kevin and was like, I don't think I can survive this. And his response was like, well, clearly you are a survivor. And then her like survival, what's the word? Instinct, ability to persevere. It is incredible because I can guarantee you, like I thought about this. I was like, if this happened to me, I think I would let my lineage die, except now that I've had kids, I would probably try to find it in me. But
that's a heavy,
yeah.
It's everything else is heavy. You're transported all of a sudden. You're in this horrible world for someone who's a Black woman in 1850. I mean, but then to know those things, it's a lot to put.
I also love how human she was because she's still cared for Rufus as complicated and,
still her family. It's still where she comes from. You know?
To me, because she cared for Rufus, it made him more of a real human person. Yeah. It made, her need to constantly save him. Even though, knowing she's saving someone who's going to do horrible things.
But even, I think Butler does take moments to build the complexity of Rufus because he does talk about how horrible his father was to him. And, so that builds, you're not sympathetic to Rufus in the sense of, and like you said, she still finds a way to be compassionate to him. But Butler builds it. He's not just pure evil. There are layers to Rufus as well. So she takes that time to do that, which I think helps us understand where Dana's coming from. again, it doesn't justify what he does.
Mm-mm.
But you see those layers. You see that they're talking about generational trauma. He's been through some trauma too.
It made me realize just how much Rufus really was. This is gonna make me sound a victim of the system. It really
that teaches you that this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is okay to act like
he
this.
learned
This
it
is
from
okay
yeah.
to treat these people as if they're property because that's what you were taught. And how do you break that? Could Dana break that cycle? She couldn't. She did, but she didn't. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I give Butler credit for it wasn't just the father was like pure evil, right? But Rufus, you saw other sides to him.
I almost don't even think the father was pure
No.
evil because he's still fine. His behavior evil,
Yeah.
definitely, but he's still
Like he believed in fairness.
yes,
Yeah, like the promise that Rufus made.
Is that not the most
It's weird.
mind-boggling? He believes in fairness, and that to me is like that's how I can see the system at work. The fact that he believes in fairness, and yet he's still treating another human being
Because what they
unfairly
believe is
because-
fairness, it was completely different.
because they don't see enslaved people or Black people, people of color, as human beings.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but it's
also important to remember that if Rufus is her family, so is his father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So is his mother.
Mm-hmm.
So this is her, the generation before them, but they are technically her kin as well. So maybe that's why she tried to find some of those layers along the way to keep reminding you of that Dana had to keep working that out, that these are actually people. That I am here because of these people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As horrible as they may be.
What did you think about Dana?
I liked her. I thought she was smart.
Yes.
Like the first time after, I think maybe after the fire one where she puts out the fire, when she goes back, she immediately gets a bag of things that she can take
keeps
with
it on
her.
her person.
Yeah.
Resourceful.
Puts a knife in it. Yeah. She's a good character. She's strong. She's resourceful. She's smart. And like every time she was like, when she was like at like a kind of like a stalemate with Rufus, like if you hurt me, I'll hurt you kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But she was also smart enough to know when to be afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She made decisions that you didn't know necessarily how it was going to pan out. It wasn't like the world could hurt her. Let's say it like that. It wasn't like Tobacco Wives, the 15-year-old girl, like she made every decision perfectly, and I never really felt like any consequences were going to hit her.
Right.
But for Dana could experience consequences. She felt the consequences of her decisions.
Every decision she made
and
could have ended this could have ended in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Including her existence in 1976.
Mm-hmm. I also thought it was interesting that she had the strength to kill Rufus in the end.
Yeah.
As much as she hated him, as much as she loved him.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that they didn't really talk about in the book, and I don't know, maybe the butterfly effect was an essay like way back when, right? Like not the movie, not an Ashton Kutcher movie, but like,
I mean, time paradoxes were a thing in science fiction for a while. So
could her killing Rufus change things in the beginning? I mean, I realized that she was waiting for Hagar, but she didn't actually know what was going to happen to the plantation, to the children, to the home, the people in it.
It still could have changed the trajectory beyond
of her life.
Yeah, because obviously Rufus's original ending wasn't that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, Dana wouldn't have been there to.
I don't know. Was it?
Was it?
Because it was a fire. Like when they read in the end. Yeah. So was she always meant to go back to help facilitate
this journey?
Because she's the one that kept saving him?
Yeah. Yeah. Never know.
Ugh.
Maybe that's the science fiction. There's their twist of you don't know. It's like the thing in Inception. You never know whether it stops or not.
Yeah. The top. Yeah.
Yeah.
The spinny thing.
Y'all know what I'm talking about,
right? Yeah. Yes.
And
I hate that. Like, it's so fun to talk about. Like, I'm talking about like Inception now, but like,
but I want to know. Frustrated. Yeah.
There's this movie, The Breakup, with Vince Vaughn and
Oh, yeah,
Jennifer
yeah.
Aniston, and there's this look at the end of the movie
And
where
that's it.
like they're walking away from each other, but they both look back, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna get back together, and Marcus is like, no, they're not, and I'm like, we've been arguing about it for I don't
Since
know,
2006
15
when it
years.
came out. Yeah,
Yeah.
But the whole point of Inception is that he was with his family, so it didn't matter whether it was real or not. He was finally in the happy place. That's what I always took from it.
Well, that's beautiful.
Okay, anyway, sorry. I
Side
didn't mean to...
note, if I ever had to choose between my family and reality, a la Neo in the, I would definitely choose to live in the simulation. You think I'm going to give this up? No. As crazy it is.
Okay. What did you think of Dana's relationship with Kevin?
I liked how Octavia took a while to say that he was white.
Yeah, I know, I did too.
And
was
when
a
it,
shock.
because when it hits, it's like, oh, it's a layer that really pulls you in. You know, she
Mhm.
did that on purpose. She could have easily said from the beginning some comment about the color of his skin, but when he became
Well,
a
she
part,
did mention his eye color, which
true, and
which is
that
kind of
could,
like a hint.
but I mean,
Yeah.
mixed race. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
you don't know. I mean, the genetics are
Yeah, I wasn't sure until
right.
she said that he
But
was.
when she said that, I liked because all of a sudden now he was a part of it, and so it was important to note that. And I thought
Mhm.
that was really well done. He's another one though. I mean, when he got stuck and his struggles to come out of it, that was tough.
Yeah.
Again, it was this, and that's what you. I mean, I get what she's that you feel for these characters. She makes it so that you have an emotional stake as you're reading about him. And the whole time I worried about poor Kevin. I mean, it was,
Mhm.
and he should have had it easier being the white male. But even he trying to come out of that world, it was definitely easier, obviously, than what Dana went through.
Yeah.
But even trying to come out of that world, still having to see what he has seen, knowing who he is in 1976, is just, it's still experiencing that, at least part of that trauma. And it was just, so anyway, but I did like him. He wasn't as well, whatever it is, Dana, obviously. She was but I think she did a good job of incorporating his part into her story.
I liked that their relationship seemed equal.
Yes.
And I mean, yes, from the race point of view, they didn't see he went back into the past and was actively anti-racist, which in 1976 it's still very impressive. But also in 1976, you still have a lot of the it's still very much so a part of the norm to have the man as the head of the household, and this is how such and such is going to act and behave, and da-da-da-da. And that I did not get that vibe from Kevin.
Well, there
You
was
did?
that thing where he wanted her to type up all of his.
Oh yeah, I saw that. And she was mad about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she did not
that
like
is-
that, and he got
that's
mad when
true.
she like refused. So
Yeah.
that was a little.
I mean, if that's the worst,
Oh, I know.
that's not as, I mean,
I know.
I
But also, there's kind of like this. I've read about it before about where like a lot of like academics and writers would get their wives
Yeah.
to type up everything, and they would get no credit for it, even if
Right.
they were actually doing some of the work in the process.
yeah.
So,
Well, there were some where they wrote books and they had to use male names. So they used their husband's name in order to publish it
Yeah.
because a female published book wouldn't have sold and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. That goes way back.
Then that makes it a little bit more timely, that like of the time, 1970s for me, because it was almost like he was futuristic.
But he still, I mean, so
which is weird because it was written in the 70s. So
I know, that's what's blowing my mind
So,
here.
yeah.
that's how far ahead Octavia Butler
Yeah.
was. Is
Operating.
why this book is still relevant, because she was so ahead of her time.
So there's this quote in the essay that's from
good.
Octavia Butler where she says, "I gave her that husband to complicate her life." Yeah. So which I like that because he kind of did. He
Yeah.
kind of complicated her life.
Tell me more.
Like, well, there's that. Well, her relationship with her family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But neither family was happy about it. There was the one
True.
aunt was okay with it, but everyone else was like totally against it. And he had family members who just
Like his sister was
like
like
stopped.
Just cut him off.
Yeah, because of that. So anyway, keep going. It was a good point. That was...
It's just making me think about things in a different way,
Yeah.
which is why I like these conversations.
I know.
I mean, being back in the past with him, and having to be his property messed
Ugh,
with her identity a lot.
that would, yeah.
Yeah.
But also maybe
It made it
saved her.
slightly easier for her.
I say might have saved her from some
Yeah.
some of the things. Yeah,
Yeah, but at the same time.
that's true.
And she loved him, clearly. She
Oh,
loved him
yeah.
a lot. And then when he came back and he was just so distant, and she and she felt like, it seemed like, I don't know how to put this. Maybe it made her feel like she wasn't home when she came back with him that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that is...
Made it difficult for her to ground herself in where she was, which also wasn't helped by the fact that she didn't know when she was going to go back, too. So it wasn't all on the relationship with him. But yeah.
He added a layer of complication to
and
an
it's
already
understandable that he was traumatized.
Oh, yeah,
but,
yeah.
Because for her, it was like being in the present was days, and for him, because this all happened in 1976 between like 2 weeks. So even though she was in the past for like 8 months at a time, like especially like before, I don't know that
it got more every time.
It got longer every time, but he was there for 5 years, not knowing if he'd ever go back, and so like.
And then when you do, it's only 2 weeks.
That really would traumatize, like change the dynamics in the. I don't know if the dynamics.
He was acting.
I'm just trying to think of what to say.
Like
it changes the person, but then you come back and you expect the coma analogy. I get where you're going. Yeah. You expect the relationship to be the same, but then it's been years for him and minutes for her, or not minutes, but like not quite as long.
It's like 8 days. It was 8 days for her.
Yeah.
So, and then there was a time that when she got there to when he showed up, which was probably like several weeks, I think. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but still.
I'm now thinking about how she talked about how quickly and easily it was for her, and I'm assuming Kevin, to adopt the mentality of the time, because there were no rights or protections or safeguards for her as a woman, as a person, as their own legal entity, and how like easy it was to just fall into that system and be a part of the system.
Yeah, because even the freed, there were still very few rights. You may not have been a slave, but as a freed African American, I mean, there were, even in the North, which was the land of freedom or whatever.
I mean, Alice was born free,
right?
But then she rejected Rufus, understandably, and so he took that away from her.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's that? The movie 12 Years a Slave, that was the book, Solomon Northup. I mean, that whole thing was he was a free man and was recaptured, or was captured. He was and then sent into slavery, and it took him 12 years to get out of it, to get back to his family, and his wife had remarried. And that so that is, just because you were free, you never knew when that would end at that time. And even in like the Compromise of 1850, the fugitive slave law, so Northern were supposed to send them back, and it became such a tension and all that kind of stuff. It never, and it just, there really wasn't freedom, even for freed African Americans.
So now what I'm thinking about, back to your question, is what is their relationship like, Kevin and Dana's, like 2 years after this has happened, 3 years after this has happened?
Well, I mean, they'll have like a shared trauma.
Oh, yeah.
But that could end up.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they briefly touched on the fact that, they, at the end, after it was all said and done, they went to Maryland to look for the house and to see what happened and to find out. And I thought it was interesting that for her, it was just as much of a homecoming, she said, that as it was for her to return to 1976. Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
And he was with her, which was significant that he hadn't.
I wonder what I do. I don't know. I thank you, Angelique. You made me think more. This book makes me think, and that's why it's so highly rated for me.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. What about her relationship with Rufus?
We kind of touched on that a little bit.
I'm glad I thought it was really smart of Octavia Butler to start the relationship as Rufus is a child.
Yes.
Because Dana could impact Rufus starting young, and that created this kind of relationship. It's weird because it almost had like at times it was like, at first it was like a mother-son really, or an aunt relationship, and then it was like a brother-sister relationship, and then it was clearly,
obsessive,
yeah. On Rufus's part. And it was just, it just makes me think. I can't even talk about it. Sorry, I'm going back into my head. Someone else talk.
Just the complexities of what she built into those two characters, and the complexities and dynamics that she built into. You could literally talk for an hour and dissect all of those different things and all of their interactions and everything. But I think that just proves that she did not want this. She wanted us to truly think about this intergenerational trauma and to truly think about the impact of how these actions and how these things that happened even centuries ago still affect us. And so I just think she did such a good, as disturbing as it could be, such a good job of just building those layers and building those characterizations till its ultimate, climax peak.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to put it into words. Kind of like, I don't know how to just say it, but it's just, God bless this woman can write.
Because it's messed up somewhat. Like, because Rufus, I feel like, was probably extra precarious, extra dangerous with his life, because I think somewhere he was like, she's going to save me.
Mm-hmm.
She'll just come
Remember,
out.
he could see her like coming.
Like,
yeah.
There was some way, like, connection. And so I feel like he was, I don't know, it was just careless with himself because he felt like he could be, like, he was invincible. I think that's part of what kept him.
She was an extension of him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, in a weird way, because they're related, she is an extension of him.
Yeah.
And that's something I kind of wish, like, as once Alice passed, when she passed away, I wish Dana had been like, why do you think we look so alike? I'm coming from 1976. You're not a child anymore. I am your lineage. But she didn't. And I am curious why that didn't get brought up. Or do you guys know why that might not have been? I mean, Marcus,
other than just keeping up with what she had,
yeah,
not wanting to do anything that may have been something that would have broken the line. I don't know. That was just, she just kind of up to that point had not done that. So maybe it was just, I don't want to do that. I don't want to cross that line.
Marcus said that it was like not even a thought in Dana's head, like, or maybe even Butler's head, or maybe for Dana it was such a division.
Yeah.
Like, Hagar is my family,
Right.
maybe Rufus is not.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it.
This is why you should read the book and then comment so that you can help us process all this, because there's so much depth. And this is one where I really hope the listeners come and comment so that we can continue this discussion and keep unpacking this, because there's so much to unpack.
I need to watch, seminars or something. I need to go sit in some professor's class.
Dr. Heather Williams at UP. I'm telling you gotta go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I think
where is it? American University that has.
Yeah,
Ibram
you can
X.
do. Yeah,
and you can, I want to know. Help me.
But I think too that their relationship shows, and then her connection back to 76. I think that central relationship shows why the stain of slavery is something that continues to be generational. And that system, the stain of that system, continues to be generational. By combining and creating that connection between those generations, to me, it's kind of like a metaphor for it's hard. You cannot outrun, and to this day, this country is still not outrun that legacy, and that stain. And so maybe that's too whatever, but that complexity, that relationship to me showcase that intergenerational trauma and how we still. So I had a girl who was in that class that I was talking about, whose grandparents, her grandmother had passed away at like 103. At one point, her grandparents had the long record for like the longest marriage.
Aww.
Yeah, and then it got broke. But I mean, one was like 105, one was like 103. Their parents had been slaves; they were sharecroppers. Yeah. And she said this when her grandfather died. She said this week, how was your weekend? Da, da, da. Well, I had to go bury my grandfather. We're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Da, da, da. She goes, but we're talking about in this class, we act like it's so far away.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents heard from their parents. Most of you knew your great-grandparents. She was like a baby. And, so she's like, I didn't know. You knew your great-grandparents. Imagine they had been slaves. That's how close this is. We act like it's so far away, and it's really, really not. And that, to me, is why that relationship symbolized that we as a society still can't. It's not that far away, and it still affects how we treat each other, and it still affects how certain people are treated. And so anyway, that was my that was her metaphor for that intergenerational trauma, was even in 76 particularly. I mean, you're 12 years out of the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act, 12 and 13 years. So it really is still, that stain is still fresh, because let's face it, slavery ended in 65, but for the next 100 years, Jim Crow and the KKK and all the things, all the systematic thing until the Voting Rights and Civil Rights Act, so it is so fresh still in 1976, but we're in 2023 and it still resonates with us. But I think that she used that relationship to help build that resonance. Did I just go off? That was crazy.
No,
right?
it just
that makes sense.
No, it made sense.
Okay.
I'm thinking now, because we're reading this in 2023 and we're like, 1976, that was so long ago, but it really wasn't. I was telling Angelique, when I was a kid in the 90s and learning things, and it was like, civil rights movement, it's all taken care of. It's all good now.
Yeah.
We're swell. But had someone told me at, 8 years old, hey, by the way, Ruby Bridges is the same age as your mother.
Yeah. Yep.
Kendall, like my mom, they were born in the same year. Like, that would have been like, oh, wait, this is not that far away. For Dana, slavery wasn't that far removed. For us, the civil rights movement isn't that far removed. And,
Ruby Bridges is still alive. She did the virtual ALA conference I went to and talked. She is still here talking about what she went through.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exact. My mom graduated from high school in 1976. So it's really, we used to think of like 2000 was like 30 years, or 1970 was 30 years ago, because it was like 2000. It's like, it is 53 years ago.
Yeah.
So but no, I mean, the civil rights era, our parents and grandparents, it was, and those of us whose family came from the South, they lived in it and witnessed it, and so all this stuff is not as far away as we like to pretend like. I think we like to believe it is, because we want to pretend like we're so much better, and we are in a lot of ways, but we're not all the time, and it's not that far away. Because it's not that far away, that's why.
I'm just thinking, and now I realize I can't remember what the question was.
About her relationship with Rufus.
Oh, we went off. Yeah.
Man.
That's how deep this is, man. It triggers. I said that really like hippy-dippy, like, man, this triggers, man. It's not like a like veteran who's been traumatic.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on Rufus and Dana?
I can understand her need to find the good in him. Not only did she know him when he was a child, and she saw him when he was not as he was still affected, but not as affected by like growing up a slave owner's son. Mm-hmm. But like, she kind of watched him grow up very quickly, but she watched him grow up and watched him progressively get worse. Yeah. And I can understand, like you said, he's her family line, and there might have been like a part of her that wanted to find the good in him. So I don't know, like when someone you're close to, or someone you're related to turns out to be not that good of a person, it's always a little
hard.
Yeah,
it feels personal.
Yeah, like there's like a little part of you that might be like, what if that's genetic, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
and that there's always that thing to defend one's family and one's legacy. We have that. Even if our family drives us crazy, I can talk about them, but you can't talk about them. You know what I mean? Like, there's that, and I think that's instinct. I mean, that's
how it was with like Alice too. Like, her and Alice were always like head to head, but like separate. Like, Alice would defend her, all the time.
So yeah, I think that you're right.
Yeah. There's some recognitions of similarities in addition to them looking similar.
Yeah.
They had a lot of Alice and Dana had a lot of similarities.
I remember similar people sometimes.
Clash.
Sometimes they work well, and sometimes they clash.
Because maybe she was kind of interacting with her mother.
I mean, that clash felt incredibly real to family relationships, and we probably can sit here and talk about our families and notice those those clashes and those kind of things. So that was honest. That's what that was.
That's a great way to describe, I think, Butler's writing. It's honest.
So honest.
It's very simple, and it's hard to. Well, I mean, I guess you can hide lies and simplicity, but then it wouldn't hold up.
It's simply written, like the words are simple, the sentence, it's not
hard to understand.
right. But as you listeners, as you can tell, there was nothing simple about what she was trying to tell you. She uses that to bring people in.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly effective.
And I think it is, and to help people continue to go.
Yeah.
To continue to talk, continue to think about it, continue to read, continue to move forward in the thought process and the discussion, which I don't know if she intended to, but if she did, she's a genius.
Well, probably in 1979, this was released. This is a lot of sci-fi readers, a lot of people who are like, oh, that how this got booked. These are probably the first time that people are reading about the slave experience. So maybe that wasn't her intention, but it's she knew she had to she couldn't go too complex too fast because no one had ever. Plenty of people had written about it, but not in this kind of context where more of a broad audience was going to actually, digest it.
So the Reader's Guide, cross-link,
which I got to go back and read it now because
it's a good essay.
Yeah.
It is. He said something in the very quickly in the beginning about the I'm gonna lose it. Don't lose it. Not writing in a first-person slave narratives anymore, and he listed out like half a dozen books that if the reader were interested in continuing to read about the experience. And I was like, oh, The Color Purple's not in here because The Color Purple hadn't been written yet.
Yeah. Yeah, 1980.
Like this book is pre The Color Purple,
right.
Which was such a huge book, probably introduction for many people into this experience.
I bet that's why this book has stood the test of time, because people like Alice Walker and others read Octavia Butler, and it inspired. I don't know this, but I'm assuming. But my guess is that this blazed a trail for other people like Alice and so many others that now can tell these stories.
Side note: I understand why she's stood the test of time, especially after hearing about Parable of the Sower, because there are the themes in that book that was written in the 1990s or 93 are hitting hard now.
Yeah. By the way, it's a talent subject, but Color Purple, they did a musical on Broadway. Now they're doing a Color Purple musical movie. Oh. And the cast is fantastic, including the lead Fantasia, who was one of the Seeleys on Broadway. Mm-hmm. So they're bringing, and Danielle Brooks, who was in the revival with Cynthia Erivo. So anyway, I know we weren't talking about, but
little fun
December 25th, it's going to be the big Christmas movie release this year. And I'm excited because the music is jaw-dropping. So, and the story, we all know the story.
Yeah.
We all love the Spielberg and Whoopi Goldberg movie, of course, but this is a new version of it. I'm excited. Anyway.
All right. What did you think of the ending?
Relief that she got home.
Yeah, there is that.
There was definitely that, because that tension. You talked about that tension of how much worse can this get? You don't know. So even though there's some the arm and all that, that's very traumatizing. There was some sense of she was able to make it out of that. She was able to get back, and then she was able to go back in 1976 and have some closure for that. It's never fully closed. We know that.
Yeah,
we know that trauma's still there, but still some sort of conclusion that wasn't as horrifying, torturing as the rest of the experience leading up to that. So there was, I actually liked the ending. It kind of was like, okay, I got through, and there was some sort of, it's positive, but not fully positive. Positive considering everything. She lost a lot. They lost a lot, but she got there.
I was going to say it left you feeling hopeful, but for me it didn't really.
Nah.
That was not accurate. But then I was trying to find the word for it wasn't positive. It ended quickly for me, and I'm glad that she wasn't stuck in 1976. I'm glad that Kevin wasn't stuck in 1819.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm glad that they weren't stuck in the past. I'm glad there was some closure there. I'm glad there was some closure about finding out what happened with her arm and things like that. But for me, it just ended. Like there was a little bit in the epilogue about what happened, but I think it just kind of left me thinking.
Maybe there was a point to
And
that
I think it
the
was
story really wasn't over.
Yeah, because she goes back to talk about what she could discover, and then it makes me wonder about the lives of the characters that we met in the past after, their families had been separated and sold. Like, oh my gosh, we met and fell in like we met the oh gosh, why am I blanking on her name now? I feel terrible. The girl who couldn't speak. Carrie. I was gonna call her Claire, and I knew that was wrong. Carrie and Nigel. Oh, Nigel.
Yeah.
And their children. And what happened to them? Like, they still had lives to endure. And I just...
But like I said, maybe that was... It was
it
a
was
quick ending. I think there was intentional.
It was good, so I liked the ending.
You keep thinking... What happened? Well, you probably can kind of piece together what happened.
So it's like I just kind of... I don't even know that it was positive because I kept.
That wasn't the
no,
word.
No. It can be positive.
No.
It can be like resolved. I guess.
Resolved. That's a good word. I like that.
Dana's story felt resolved, but it also felt like it opened up so much more wounds. It's like it brought things to the surface in Dana. It brought things to the surface in Kevin and their relationship and how they're going to interact with the world today. Because, like you were saying, the slavery mentality, life, that still impacts today, and we just so often want to just kind of forget about it and sweep it under the rug, and that brought it right to the surface. So for me, it was almost like the ending was like a whiplash. Like the whole book was almost like a whiplash experience of like, this just happened to me.
It makes me wonder
because it happened to Dana, and then it's over.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
No. It just makes me wonder in 76 or 79 that did Octavia Butler at some point plan to go back to it, that she didn't tie up all the loose ends because it was something that maybe she thought she would revisit. I mean, science fiction authors are known for their sequels and series and stuff. Maybe not. I mean, she never obviously had to, and it still had the impact. But I just wonder sometimes I wonder that now that you mentioned that, and the more I've thought about it, I wonder if this is something where she's thought about other ways to come to finish this story. You know, a lot of stories though, like the Better Call Saul concept, right? Mm-hmm. So you take one of the characters that you knew, and let's see how their journey went, and we'll tie it back into. I wonder if that was a plan at some point. Maybe not. Maybe it's not. I mean, we'll never know.
So for me, this book is full of it's just like this relentless tension in this book, like thing after thing, bad thing after bad thing just keeps happening to Dana. Like, it was hard for me. I had to take like a really like day-long breaks between reading.
Same.
Just to like process it.
This is not a binge read.
Yeah.
This is not a binge read, guys.
Yeah. So when Rufus was finally dead and she was back home, it just that there was that relief there.
Yeah, relief I think is the word.
Yeah.
Relief, resolve, like relief.
Yeah. Like she was home. I mean, and that she wouldn't go back because the one pulling her back in the first place was Rufus. And he was gone. And so part of the reason I gave this book a 3, it's a really good book.
Yeah.
And I think lots of people should read it if they can stomach that tension. Because that's why I gave it that 3, because of that tension. I'm not good at processing that much tension all the time. It's not really a thriller. It's more like a horror.
Yeah.
So, and it's just...
It's a horror that...
Yeah.
Most horror, you have the cheap jump scares, or you know, there's not as much surface level. You know, you don't get to know these characters. I mean, no offense, most modern horror movies are...
Yeah.
You know, they're there for profit. They're there to appease the base. This is like... This is a real horror. This might as well have been an actual account of what happened in slavery. Yeah. That's how real
reading
it was.
This book is like always waiting for that jump scare.
Yeah.
And then when something bad happens, you know that that's not the final thing that's going to happen. So when you get to the ending, there's that like, I don't know if the catharsis is the right word. No. But
I like relief, because relief doesn't mean it's over.
Yeah.
It just means that there's that moment of
exhale.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an exhale.
I think what you're saying is it was a tough read.
Yeah, it was a tough read.
And I get that.
So I think it did feel more like a horror.
Yeah.
Because it's horror. So like when I think about horror and like thrills and jump scares, I think about I saw a documentary on Disney Plus about Walt Disney and creating the theme parks.
Yeah.
And he said something to the effect of like, near-death experiences without the dying is what makes it fun, and that's why it's fun to go on thrilling rides, and that's why people enjoy reading horror, because it's like near-death experience. But this was a real experience. Even though it was fictional.
Yeah.
This was a real experience reflecting the real horror in our life. Well, not our life, but like in our
culture,
real
our history,
world, in our history, in our country.
Not far from, I mean, we're sitting in North Carolina. These things happened in this state. Not as much on this side of the state, but still in this state.
I mean, it begs you to reflect upon, it begged me to reflect upon, you know, my own family history and lineage. Thank you.
Lineage.
Like, I'm not, you know, my family is not on the good side of history here.
No, mine not either.
I mean, I had some people, like, because, you know, family legends happen. It's how it goes, you know, where, like, my great-grandmother, whom I knew and loved, and she didn't die until the late 90s, but was born in 1906. You know, she had grandfathers on either side of the war. So I have a story, you know, it happened. And so, like, we got to confront
There was a movie called The Help, which when it was released was such a groundbreaker just because you had never seen that many women and that many women of color in a major motion picture that made money. They dumped it in August thinking it was never going to be made. We look back now 12 years later, and it's like, okay, this was problematic, right? But there's a line from it that I liked, and that was it was the Emma Stone line talking about how these women, talking about African-American women who are raising these children, talking about how we love them, we grow up, but then we grow up and we're just like our parents, and we end up treating them poorly. Like, so basically in that story, Skeeter was the one that broke that cycle. So I'm proud to say it was my grandparents. My grandfather was the one that broke that cycle. I have no doubt that before him, the treatment of people who were African-American, you know, my great-grandmother had BB who worked for her, and she was not very nice to her, you know, and this goes back, and I know for a fact on my dad's side that way back that there are people who own slaves. So yeah, you have to, we have to recognize that history. But then I got to see the generation that broke that cycle and said, this is not how we're going to do this anymore. And my grandfather was at the bank. He reached out to members of that. He helped Harvey Gantt finance and fund black churches here in Gaston County that otherwise wouldn't have been financed, because he thought it was important to help and support this, because I think he saw his BB and he was the first one that was like, this is someone who I love. Why are we treating her differently just because of the color? You know what I'm saying? So it's, you can go through your histories, and you can go through all of our histories, and you probably find things in your past that a lot of our ancestors were not on the right side of history. And that's something that we all need to reckon with and understand. I don't want you, I don't feel this whole thing of, oh, people are going to feel uncomfortable about it. No, it's just important that I recognize that happened, and I need to know that happened so that we can make sure that we move forward every generation and do better and do better and do better. I hope my nephew does better and his children do better.
I think it's just because I'm so vain that I make things always, you know, come back to me. And that's why I was like, well, if we're asking, who is this book written for? And if it's written for me, then maybe the question, you know, how do I reflect upon my own family history and the part that my family played in history? Not to say that
you didn't do it, but you still.
Or even that, you know, I don't have family members that, like Rufus, I loved and can also admit they're problematic.
Yeah.
And so it makes me think on just, you bring up a question and I just start thinking.
But stories like this are important because you do need to think about it.
Yeah.
Because the only way we can move forward is by reckoning with the past. And so maybe that's part of this whole time travel thing, was Octavia Butler basically telling us that we have to reconcile what happened in the past. We have to understand why it was a problem. We have to understand why it was there so that we can keep moving in the right direction and not go backwards. People want to deny the Holocaust, and we have people getting shot outside of synagogues. We need to learn about those histories so that doesn't continue to be spread.
When I was hosting book club, one of the books that was chosen was The End of Your Life book club.
Schwab. Yeah. It's on my list.
It's a nonfiction book. It's a memoir about a man and his mother, and his mother's going through chemo treatments, and the books that she chooses to read during chemo aren't like light, easygoing books. It's really heavy, reflect upon your life and your world and your community, and hard books to read. And she said something to the effect in this book of like, you must acquaint yourself with evil. You have to you have to look at it, you have to read it, you have to learn about it in order to recognize it in your own life. And it makes me think a little bit about what I was saying earlier about Dana and oh my gosh, Kevin. Mom brain. Dana and Kevin suddenly now being back in 1976 and having to look around 1976 and then cope with what they have just experienced. Oy. Just oy.
Yeah.
Did she pass away?
Yes.
In 2006?
Okay.
When
What I will say is this makes me want to go back and read more of her work. Get a break, something
yeah.
light, but then go back to it, because clearly this is a profound author.
Yeah.
This is an author that we should continue to make sure. Well, I think we have it on staff picks. I think Talisa, this is one of her staff picks, so she really liked it, and she likes horror, and she likes she likes these kind of books, and so we need to make sure that we continue to celebrate Octavia Butler and everything that she did, because her legacy, as much as the legacy that her literature, is something that we need, and we need to make sure we continue to circulate it and to talk about it and to put it on display and have other people dive into these stories, because even though they're hard, they're important. So
I just looked it up. February 24th.
Wow.
2006.
So
we're coming up on
her. Well, that's a loss. That was a great loss. So
okay. So final question: who would you recommend this book to?
I'll be honest with you. I think this is one of those that, obviously adults,
Yeah.
But I think this is one of those that I would recommend to anyone who is willing to sit down and hear these stories and process them. I think it's an important book. And that's why I think it's higher for me, because it wasn't you're right, it was a tough reading experience.
Yeah.
It's not like, what was the Barry Alice Monroe Christmas one where, everything happened. Yeah, everything. By the way, she has a new one coming out. We should totally read it. Okay, it's for Christmas. Yeah, a new Christmas one coming out this year, so we should make that our Christmas one. Anyway, that one was totally a different. That was a fun reading experience. There was no depth to it at all. But for this one, I just think it's an important book, and I think people need to read it. As many people as possible need to read it. And I am interested in the Hulu series too, which, by the way, the commercials and previews for that make it the horror aspect. They definitely are doubling down on that in the visual part of it, which makes sense.
Yeah.
To build that tension. So.
Yeah, I will not be watching that. This book was traumatizing enough. But I wish it well. I hope it does good.
It's like I watched some of those, like I watched Dope Sick, and there's others that's like, I will watch it once. I'm glad I did, and then I'll never watch it again because it is hard. It is hard.
I think anyone who's wanting to learn and think about, any of the themes, race in America, I think this would be a good one.
Generational trauma.
Generational trauma.
This is, if you're looking for books that are own voices, that have strong female leads, that have strong racial minority, black leads, kind of like the Carmen one that we did. There's so many check boxes there. If you're looking for those narratives because there aren't enough of them and you want to experience them, this checks all those boxes and is definitely worth your time. A very well done version of all those things that and the importance of it explains why those things that people are looking for are important, because of books like this explains it.
Okay. If you're wanting a book to chew on, to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, but don't chew on our books.
Yeah.
Because they'll have to charge you for them.
That's
except for the board books. Moms out there, don't worry. If they're chewed on, it's fine.
Only
we
chew
let it
metaphorically.
Go. Yes.
All right. Anything else we want to mention?
What's our next book?
Good Omens.
So a comedy.
Yes. Read the footnotes.
Palate cleanser. Read the footnotes. Okay.
I know, she told me to read the footnotes.
Well, after the Carmen one that we did, in the Dream House, I've started. I'm like anytime.
She said.
Yeah. Now I'm
what I
like
said.
every footnote I'm going to be reading. I mean, I used to read the footnotes a lot when I was doing like in my history degree because it was kind of like those were the sources, and then you'd have to use those sources for whatever you were doing.
Mhm.
But that's because I had to. So when I stopped having to, I was like, no, I'm never reading a footnote. But if I had not done that with that book, oh my God, completely different
It would have
experience.
been a completely different.
Don't
yeah.
worry, I am all on the footnotes now. I'm
I
back
know.
on it.
I'm glad she had said that too. So you had asked me my notes.
Mhm.
Go for it.
So there's a quote that I want to read real quick.
Yeah. Please.
It's from the essay in the back by let's give his name. So
Yeah, I know this poor gentleman. Like
Robert Crossley from the University of Massachusetts at Boston. Well, when he wrote it, he was there. It's a critical essay.
Boston.
Boston.
Your cousin from Boston.
Anyway, there's a quote that I really liked. Much of Kindred is a record of endurance, but there are also numerous acts of heroism and humanity, culminating in the act of manslaughter and self-defense that finally liberates Dana at terrible cost from her tyrannical ancestor.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought about it like that. By her killing Rufus, it was her.
Release from this.
Yeah.
It was her ability to make the change of the past. It was her ability to let it go, to separate it. And I thought it was also very interesting that her arm was left in the past because that past is still continuing to impact her, though.
Yeah.
Ugh.
She can't completely let it go. Like
Yes.
Rufus
'Cause she
couldn't
lives with it
completely
every
let
day.
her go. She can't completely let go of that past that she saw.
Golly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Dang, now
I got to read this essay. That's the
Yeah,
other
it's
thing
a
too
good
is
essay. It's
if
a
you
good
get it, get the version that has the essay and don't skip the essay because there's so much good stuff.
It does
in there.
help you process.
It
the book.
really does. Yeah. I mean, I haven't even read it, but just what y'all have talked about, I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
that's not
you should
that many
read it.
pages.
It
I'm gonna do
needs to
that.
be read. Okay, so you asked me about if I had anything else to say.
Mhm.
I looked it up, and the Toronto Library actually has a list of Black speculative fiction
Ooh.
Mhm.
and authors and writers. Janelle Monáe.
Yes.
So she is all about Afrofuturism, and
Mhm.
that's a lot of what Octavia Butler writes about. So if you're into Afrofuturism, this will be a good book for you.
And isn't she in the series?
Is she?
No, maybe not.
I don't know. I
Maybe
haven't really
not.
looked into it.
Okay. Her music is definitely hits that thing.
Oh,
She was in Glass Onion. And she was really
She
good.
was.
She
She
wasn't-
was. She was
she
so
was
good.
magical.
was
She
so
did
good.
great.
She was so good.
During the second chapter, The
Ooh,
Fall,
Hidden
she
Figures.
talks
She's
into
good in
second
Figures, too.
person. Who's she talking to? I don't know. I don't know. Apparently, Butler went into talking into the second person. They started using second person. I noticed it because we, in general, do not enjoy second
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
I was surprised that Kevin was white, and he was only 34. What a baby! Because he's younger than most of us in this room.
Not me.
I am really impressed
What?
that Dana knew that James Monroe was president in 1815.
Well, it wasn't that long ago for
You
her.
didn't know that James Monroe was president?
Can you name all the presidents in order? I can only do the first 5.
Really?
You really can?
Probably. If you give me a second.
He likes history, though.
Yeah, I know. But that's what I'm saying. I know she was a writer and that she had
Quincy
some.
Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Tyler. No, Harrison, Tyler. Fillmore. No, maybe I can't. Crap. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I was impressed.
I knew that one, though, Monroe. I knew that one.
Anyway.
Fillmore was actually, and then it was Pierce. Who was 12? Zachary Taylor. What a... Those are the Buchanan. That was a string of losers.
I have a lot more thoughts, but I'm not going to say them now because it's just too much. You cannot contain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't contain it.
You got anything else you want to say? Or
No, I'm good. This was definitely worth the read. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. To close out this episode, I would like to promote the Gaston County Public Library's virtual learning and library portal. GCPL has partnered with Niche Academy to provide a platform for tutorials for many of our virtual resources, how-to videos, technology learning, virtual story times, and more. Just go to gastonlibrary.org and navigate to our full page of e-resources and find it under Library Services. All right, that's it for this episode of We're Booked Up. Kindred is available both in the library and online in the Libby and Hoopla apps. Let us know what you think of the book and what you think of what we think of the book. Just leave a comment at the Off the Shelf blog at gastonlibrary.blogspot.com or at gastonspeaks.podbean.com. Next month's book will be Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.